Stop the wedding. Sheila exposes Deacon's dark secret at the altar. On a sun-drenched autumn in Los Angeles, the elegant auditoriums of the Forrester estate were converted into a stirring marriage venue, white roses slinging over golden bends and a string quintet playing vocally as guests gathered for what was supposed to be a fresh launch for two complicated souls. The form promised redemption, love, and the possibility that indeed the most shattered hearts on the bold and the beautiful could find mending. Deacon Sharp stood at the balcony, dressed in an impeccably acclimatized tuxedo, his expression a careful mix of modesty and stopgap. He'd fought long and hard to rebuild his life, to prove that he was no longer the reckless man who had burned islands with nearly every family in Los Angeles. Across the aisle, his bridegroom-to-be lustered in ivory silk, her robe catching the California breath as she held a bouquet of cream peonies. Guests rumored about alternate chances and whether Deacon truly merited one. Brooke Logan watched with cautious eyes, her defensive instincts no way far from the face. Rich Forrester stood beside her, jaw tight, no way completely convinced that Deacon's metamorphosis was genuine. Hope Logan, torn between fidelity and dubitation, clasped her hands together and supplicated that this marriage would not end in disaster. Yet beneath the polished face of love, a storm brewed, one that would explode in a single indelible cry. Just as the officiant began the solemn words, asking if anyone expostulated to this union, the air shifted. A familiar voice, sharp and laced with fury, sliced through the serenity. Stop the marriage. Every head turned as Sheila Carter appeared at the end of the aisle, her presence titillating the crowd. Dressed in bold sanguine, her eyes blazing with a blend of exculpation and preoccupation, she paraded forward like a woman on a charge. Gasps gurgled through the guests. Sheila was a name that still transferred chills through the Forrester and Logan families. Her history of manipulation, violence, and grim pursuit of love and vengeance had left scars that no way truly healed. Security dithered, doubtful whether to intermediate, because Sheila was screaming incoherently. She was holding commodity in her hand. A train. Thick, sanction-looking, and ruinous. Cleric's face drained of color. The confident bachelor dissolved, replaced by a man possessed by his history. Sheila's eyes locked onto his with a blend of treason and triumph. She blazoned that the marriage was a taradiddle, that Deacon had been hiding a dark secret from everyone present, especially from the woman about to pledge her life to him. The bridegroom's fritters quivered around her bouquet as murmurs boosted. Brooke stepped forward, demanding that Sheila leave, criminating her of orchestrating another spectacle for attention. But Sheila, surprisingly composed, claimed she had evidence. She claimed that Deacon's recent business successes were erected on deception, that he'd been intimately censoring plutocrat through a shell pot tied to a dangerous felonious network from his history. The blameworthiness hung in the air like bank. Ridge moved artificially to shield his family, defying Sheila and questioning her credibility. He reminded everyone of her history, suggesting that this was nothing further than vengeance for being barred, for losing control over Cleric. But Sheila anticipated the mistrustfulness. She opened the train and revealed clones of fiscal statements, sale logs, and emails allegedly transferred from Deacon's private account. The documents detailed large totalities of plutocrat moving between Il Giardino and an coastal account. The name on the account was strange to utmost but not to Deacon. His silence was louder than any denial. Hope felt her heart pounding in her casket. She had defended Deacon so numerous times, believing that her father merited compassion and remission. She stepped toward him, her voice shaking as she asked him to tell her it wasn't true. Deacon plotted to form words. He claimed that the documents were being misinterpreted, that he'd made miscalculations in the history but hadn't returned to that life. Sheila laughed plaintively, criminating him of insincerity. She claimed she had discovered the verity when she noticed disagreement in his business dealings, and followed the trail herself. According to Sheila, Deacon had been intimately meeting with an old associate tied to systematized crime, planning a parlous expansion that could buckle at any moment and drag everyone down with him. The bridegroom lowered her bouquet, gashes brimming in her eyes. She asked Cleric why he hadn't told her about these contended dealings. He reached for her, contending that he'd intended to explain formerly everything was secure. That single expression, formerly everything was secure, echoed ominously. Brooke seized on it, demanding to know what exactly demanded securing. The guests watched in stupefied silence as what should have been promises of love turned into a courtroom-style battle. The officiant still stepped away, seeing that this was no longer a form but a reckoning. Sheila continued her grim exposition, revealing that authorities were formally probing suspicious deals. She inferred that civil agents could arrive at any moment. Whether this was true or in magnification was unclear, but the fear it sparked was real. Ridge indicted Sheila of fabricating substantiation. She challenged him to corroborate it himself, tossing clones of the documents toward him. As Ridge scrutinized the runners, his expression hardened. The figures were stunning. Indeed, if innocent Deacon's failure to expose similar massive fiscal snares was a treason of trust. Cleric eventually snapped, turning on Sheila, incriminating her of stalking him, of playing into private accounts, of orchestrating this entire demotion because she couldn't stand being left out of his future. Sheila didn't deny digging for information. Rather, she claimed she did it out of love, believing she was guarding him from himself. The crooked sense of her concession unsettled everyone. She claimed that if he truly wanted redemption, he'd to be honest, and she was forcing that honesty into the light. The bridegroom stepped back, removing her engagement ring with pulsing fritters. She said she couldn't marry a man who still kept secrets that large, anyhow, of whether they were felonious or simply reckless. Deacon prayed her not to let Sheila destroy what they had erected. Hope, torn between heartache and wrathfulness, told her father that redemption needed translucency, not hidden deals. Brooke added that trust, formerly broken, is nearly insolvable to restore. The atmosphere grew heavier as enchantresses noiselessly echoed in the distance. Coexistence or evidence of Sheila's claims no bone. New guests began to disperse, brooding about dishonors and shattered visions. The string quintet had long since fallen silent. White rose petals fluttered to the ground like remnants of a dream unraveling. Ridge suggested calling a council incontinently. Deacon stood frozen, watching as the life he envisaged slipped down in real time. Sheila's triumph was complicated. Though she had succeeded in halting the marriage, there was pain in her eyes. She had loved Deacon in her own malformed way, and exposing him meant losing him. She rumored that she couldn't watch him make a future on falsehoods. Cleric responded with raw fury, telling her she had assured he'd no way forgive her. The bridegroom walked past Sheila without a word, robe running behind her like a ghost of what might have been. As authorities eventually appeared at the estate gates, drawn either by anonymous tip or unconnected command, the pressure peaked. Cleric was incontinently arrested, but he was informed that questions demanded answering. Cameras from gossip outlets had formerly begun to gather, landing every anguished expression. Brooke held Hope near, grunting that occasionally painful trueness are necessary. Ridge remained watchful, set to cover his family from any fallout. Sheila dallied at the edge of the chaos, neither completely villain nor idle in that moment. She had exploded a lemon that exposed secrets, but also devastated lives. Cleric, attended down for questioning, looked back formerly, at the balcony, at the scattered petals, at the woman who nearly came his woman. His eyes also set up Sheila's, filled with treason and undetermined emotion. In true fashion of the bold and the beautiful, the occasion closed not with resolution but with moping questions. Were the documents authentic? Had Cleric truly regressed to dangerous alliances, or was he entangled in a misreading amplified by Sheila's preoccupation? Would the bridegroom ever consider remission if the allegations proved inflated? And what consequences would Sheila face for her dramatic interruption? As the screen faded to black, observers were left with a marriage halted, reports in tatters, and the memorial that in Los Angeles, love and treason frequently walked down the same aisle. 5,000. The fallout from the shattered form didn't fade when the guests left the Forrester estate grounds. Rather, it gurgled outward, touching every corner of Los Angeles society, and tensing its grip on everyone connected to Deacon Sharp. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, social media buzzed with vague prints of Sheila Carter storming the aisle, Deacon's stricken expression firmed mid-denial, and the bridegroom's robe caught in the wind like a white flag of rendition. On the bold and the beautiful, marriages were infrequently simple, but this bone had exploded with a force indeed seasoned observers would struggle to forget. At Il Giardino latterly that evening, the formerly cozy eatery felt like hostile home. Workers rumored in the kitchen, doubtful whether their jobs were secure. Many pious staff members claimed Deacon would clear his name, but others bothered about civil agents and frozen accounts. Deacon sat alone at a corner table long after closing, a half-empty glass untouched before him. The demotion replayed in his mind on an endless circle, Sheila's voice cutting through the form, the shock in Hope's eyes, the slow, ruinous moment when his bridegroom removed her ring. Hope arrived first. She had left the estate in gashes but refused to let the day end without defying her father. She took a seat across from him, her expression a mixture of wrathfulness and hopeless love. She didn't roar. That nearly made it worse. She asked him plainly whether there was any verity to the fiscal trail Sheila revealed. Deacon claimed the deals were legal, parlous yes but not felonious. He admitted he'd partnered with an old contact to secure backing for an ambitious expansion, but he swore there was no laundering, no felonious enterprise. Hope pressed him on why he'd hidden it. He confessed he stressed judgment. He stressed Ridge's combination, Brooke's dubitation, and indeed Hope's disappointment if the adventure failed. Silence stretched between them as Hope realized the treason wasn't inescapably about crime, it was about secretiveness. Meanwhile, Sheila dallied outside the eatery in her auto, watching through the window. Palm hadn't brought satisfaction. She felt displaced, as however by exposing Cleric she had cancelled her own place in his life. Memories swamped her. Moments when he'd defended her against the world, when they had spoken about redemption, as if it were a destination they could reach together. She induced herself she had acted out of love, that she couldn't allow him to make happiness on a foundation she believed unstable. Yet mistrustfulness crept by. What if she had misinterpreted what she set up? Across city, Brooke and Ridge examined at the Forrester manse. Brooke bothered about Hope's emotional state and about the public demotion the family had endured. Ridge, realistic as ever, concentrated on the legal counteraccusations. He communicated an attorney to discreetly corroborate whether the documents Sheila distributed were authentic. The counsel promised to probe first thing in the morning. Ridge remained suspicious of Sheila's timing. Why stay until the balcony? Why not defy Cleric intimately? Brooke suggested that Sheila demanded spectacle, that her personality thrived on dramatic exposure. Still, indeed Brooke admitted the paperwork looked disturbingly real. The coming morning, captions dominated entertainment blogs: Marriage from Hell, Sheila strikes again, Deacon's dark dealings? Journalists bivouacked outside Il Giardino, turning the formerly humble cafe into a shooter's circus. Cleric stepped outdoors to address them compactly, denying felonious wrongdoing and asking for sequestration. His calm surface masked a storm of anxiety, however. Would they find commodity that could be twisted against him? He knew his associate had a questionable history, if authorities dug deep enough. That association alone could stain him, anyhow, of legitimacy. Hope returned to her home and set up herself gaping at Nonage Prince images of a father who had failed her ahead but always claimed he wanted to be better. She felt torn between fidelity and literalism. Liam, ever defensive, prompted her to guard her heart. He refocused out that patterns matter. Hope bristled at the recrimination that her father could no way change. Yet she couldn't ignore that secretiveness had formerly again caused desolation. At the police department, primary inquiries were underway. The documents Sheila presented touched off procedural reviews but not immediate charges. An officer still noted that anonymous tips frequently surfaced during particular controversies and needed careful verification. The query hung like a pall over Deacon's life. He met with his counsel, who advised full cooperation and translucency. Cleric agreed, determined not to run from scrutiny. Redemption, he realized, demanded courage. Sheila meanwhile sought confirmation. She visited an old confidant and reported the dramatic interruption in pictorial detail. She described the look on Deacon's face, averring it verified guilt. Yet when pressed about concrete substantiation beyond fiscal irregularities, her certainty wavered. She admitted she had penetrated information through questionable means, nothing overtly illegal but clearly invasive. The confidant advised her that indeed if Deacon was innocent, she had irreparably damaged their relationship. Days passed. The bridegroom, still reeling, retreated from public view. Musketeers prompted her to demand answers before making endless opinions. She replayed Deacon's words in her mind. "I was going to tell you." The expression felt both honest and concave. She wondered whether fear of losing her had driven him to conceal the verity. Could love attend with secrets that large? Ridge entered an update from the attorney the coastal account was, but it was tied to a illicit investor group with a controversial history, rather than proven felonious exertion. The finances transferred were substantial but not innately illegal. Still, the association carried reputational threat. Ridge bare this to Brooke, emphasizing that while Cleric might avoid execution, trust remained shattered. Hope brazened Sheila days latterly in a chance hassle at an exchange. The pressure between them was palpable. Hope demanded to know whether Sheila had absolute evidence of felonious intent or had acted on dubitation. Sheila defended her decision fiercely, arguing that secrets of that magnitude justified exposure. Hope combated that the timing was cruel and conceivably tone-serving. Their exchange ended undetermined, each woman induced of her own moral high ground. Back at Il Giardino, business suffered. Pious patrons returned cautiously, while others avoided the spectacle. Cleric threw himself into work, determined to stabilize operations. He communicated his investor, demanding clarity about any connections that could jeopardize his character. The investor comforted him that everything was above board, though the explanation felt rehearsed. Deacon realized he trusted too fluently, dazed by ambition. One evening as rain poured over Los Angeles, Sheila appeared at Deacon's door. He nearly didn't let her in. When he did, the discussion was raw. She admitted she might have acted impulsively, but claimed her instincts infrequently failed. Deacon indicted her of sabotaging his happiness because she couldn't bear being barred. Sheila's voice cracked as she denied it. She said watching him pledge ever to someone differently had restarted injuries she had healed. In exposing him, she had also exposed herself, her covetousness, her moping attachment. The emotional battle shifted when Deacon revealed commodity unanticipated. He'd planned to ramify ties with the investor after the marriage, once the expansion was secure. He admitted he honored the reputational threat and wanted to cover his bridegroom from query. Sheila goggled at him, stunned however. Her dramatic interruption had derailed not a descent into crime but an exit strategy, if true. Mistrustfulness swamped her expression. As weeks unfolded, investigators concluded there was inadequate substantiation of felonious conduct. The case still lost instigation. Public attention shifted to fresher dishonors. Yet particular consequences dallied. The bridegroom requested a private meeting with Cleric in the same theater where they nearly married. The roses had been replaced, the bow disassembled. She told him she still loved him but demanded evidence of lasting translucency. She proposed comforting fiscal openness and a pause on marriage plans. Cleric agreed without vacillation. Hope cautiously supported conciliation but claimed her father understood the fragility of trust. Brooke maintained guarded dubitation. Ridge remained vigilant but conceded that no charges had surfaced. Sheila, insulated, grappled with the reality that her grand gesture had neither secured Cleric's gratefulness nor guaranteed his downfall. She faced legal warnings for distributing non-public documents attained through dubious channels, though formal charges remained doubtful. In a final, emotionally charged gathering at Il Giardino, Deacon intimately thanked those who stood by him and apologized for the chaos. He didn't name Sheila, but everyone felt her presence in the implied words. He declared that redemption wasn't a single act but a diurnal commitment. Hope embraced him, motioning conservative remission. From a distance, Sheila watched formerly more, but this time without the fiery certainty that had propelled her down the aisle crying expostulations. She understood that love twisted by fear could come destruction. Whether she'd learn from that consummation remained uncertain. As the saga continued on The Bold and the Beautiful, observers were left meaning the fragile line between exposure and sabotage, between protection and control. The halted marriage came lower about crime and further about trust, how fluently it fractures, how sorrowfully it rebuilds. Deacon's future remained verbal, balanced between ambition and responsibility. Sheila's path floated between guilt and relapse. And in Los Angeles, where glamour masks vulnerability, the echoes of "Stop the Marriage" would loiter long after the petals were swept down. In the weeks that followed, life in Los Angeles sounded to recapture its polished meter, but beneath the face, fractures remained. The halted marriage hadn't simply been a disturbing spectacle, it had been a glass, forcing each person involved to defy uncomfortable trueness about trust, ambition, and the ghosts that no way completely vanish. On the bold and the beautiful, emotional foreshocks frequently resonate longer than the